paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted. But we are going to leave the spirits alone for a while. They've had some rough times here. I think we're going to delve a little bit into government conspiracies. And especially, this lady is outstanding on this one. Mary Joyce was a investigative reporter for some of the major mainstream media types. Now she's writing books of things she's more interested in and reporting it. She wrote Sky Ships Over Cashiers and you'll love this one, Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. And I hope we can get her back for that because that sounds intriguing. But what we're going to talk about tonight, and as you guys know, I'm a implant or replant or whatever you want to call it. I came from Missouri to North Carolina. Here in the mountains, there is a lot of military craft flies over low sometimes. And there's a couple. I'm a veteran. I couldn't even recognize them. What we're going to be talking about is her book, Underground Military Bases Hidden in the North Carolina Mountains. And since I have no knowledge of this at all, except what I've seen, I'm bringing in Mary Joyce. Hello, Mary. Okay, she's having some internet problems. Let me see if we can find her. Get her back here real quick. Okay, friends, we're back. We've got Mary. She's having some internet issues. We're going to keep trying. If it doesn't work, we'll figure something out. But Mary, thanks for coming on, and I really want to hear about the military bases here in North Carolina.
Now that you're living in North Carolina, you're probably just a little bit more interested, right?
By far, yes.
Anyhow, right off the bat, I want your listeners to know, and your watchers to know, that these witnesses that come forward on the underground bases, they do it at great jeopardy to themselves, at least in some cases. And I want to actually give you an example of the exact words from the witness, and I call him Hawk, because it gives you an idea of what they have faced in order to tell me some of this stuff. And he was threatened by a man who said, quote, "Be careful what you say, be careful what you tell people." Then he said, now he's talking about this man who's threatening him, and this is a quote from my source. Then he opened up his coat, and he had a knife on each hip. I could tell by the casing that it was a short knife. He pulled it out and said, "Do you see this knife, how it has a 3-inch blade and it's curved?" I said, "Yes." "Have you ever seen one before?" I said, "No." "Well, it's for slicing throats. If you love yourself and your family, you better keep quiet or I'll come back and I'll slice your throats." And whenever I met with him, we would meet at different places. We never met at the same place. So it was a little bit like one of these movies, what we were going through just to get his information.
This goes right into the deep throat kind of stuff from Watergate. Are we dealing with the U.S. military or some CIA spy type group?
First of all, we could lump it under government. All right.
Okay.
The one exception, the one base that we have found that's underneath the Mount Mitchell, which is the largest, tallest mountain east of the Mississippi, and there's a huge facility beneath that. That one, the witness, which is Hawk, the one I just quoted you, said that when he was observing that from the woods, that this mountain opened up. It looked like just a mountain. Opened up, and like a warehouse door was there, and UN soldiers came out. So you wonder, if they're all in cahoots, if they're all under the same control. I do not know, but that's the only one where we have seen UN troops.
So this is blue, powder
The
blue
blue hats,
helmets.
the
Yeah.
blue hat, the blue hats, and that's how they're referred to. Yes.
Why would there shouldn't be UN troops on our soil? I mean, should there?
I wouldn't think so, but apparently that happens. I do know that here in the forest closer to where I live, which is near the Cherokee Indian Reservation, in the past, people have seen military troops from other countries practicing in our deep woods. So some kind of cooperative thing is going on. I've never gotten to the, I can never get enough information to definitive, actually tell you for sure
Right.
why they are here and what they are doing. I also found it really interesting that all 5 bases that I learned about here in Western North Carolina are all under public land. Now, that may have something to do with all this. There's one under the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is the most visited park in the world. And you wouldn't think something like that would be going on there. But it's a pretty big area. And if you get east of where all the tourists go, it gets pretty wild, and the tourists don't normally get there. There's one under Mount Mitchell, which I mentioned to you. There's one under Chimney Rock State Park. There's one
That's
under
pretty
the
close.
Yeah, for you. It is.
Yeah.
One is in the Linville Gorge, and the Linville Gorge is better known for the Brown Mountain Lights. And
I've been there. Beautiful waterfalls there.
it's a beautiful place. And the 5th one is, we call it, anyhow, I won't give you the name right now, but it's along the Blue Ridge Parkway. So those are the 5 where I've
Very
had.
close to me also.
Yeah, you're close to a lot of this stuff.
This, I got to tell you, is kind of, and I don't frighten easy. I'm an ex-cop, but this is kind of scary. The idea that foreign troops are practicing in our mountains, our woods, wherever in this country.
Well, let me just keep messing with your mind then.
Oh,
Let's stick with the Mount Mitchell one.
Okay.
They were observing what was going on, and after midnight in a nearby town called Marion, which is east of Mount Mitchell.
They have a big Bigfoot thing there every year.
Yeah, they do. And this train came pulled in, and they unloaded tanks, military tanks that only had their primer color or primer paint on them, so they could be painted any way possible. And these were followed. They were taken by, trucks to Mount Mitchell. They went up the road, and they never saw them come down anywhere. So they disappeared into that facility. And according to our main witness, that facility is 20 stories deep.
Oh,
and
gosh.
It's amazing to me that a number of these facilities, if people come upon them, they don't even know that they're there. It will literally look like a mountainside, and then it'll open up. And if you hadn't seen it open up, you would never know it was there. One of the witnesses saw a similar thing happen in the Linville Gorge. And many of your listeners may have heard about similar things going on out in Area 51, where the mountainside will open up. So that seems to be a really common type of camouflage entrance.
But if I was to drive out towards Area 51, I would eventually hit a fence, white trucks, helicopters, armed men watching me and waiting to see if I cross that line. What would happen if I go to Lindell Gorge again or these places and just wander?
You can wander, and like one of the witnesses was a social worker, and he and his girlfriend were just out hiking one day. And they were 2 of the witnesses that actually saw the mountain open up. There doesn't seem to be any protection to keep people away. Now, with that said, that's not true of all the bases.
Okay.
There's a place we call it Perry. It stands for Pisgah Astronomical Research Institute. It's an old Cold War facility that used to track satellites, and it was truly the Department of Defense. Supposedly, they are no longer a part of that, and they've turned it into like an educational facility for astronomers. Well, sometimes that's it. Sometimes people can get right in there. There's no problem. Other times there have been people outside the gate or men outside the gate dressed in SWAT outfits. So it depends on when, sometimes you can walk right in. But when things are going on, it's not so, not the same thing at all.
I have been in the Pisgah Mountains, but I would not even know I was close to this huge military complex unless I happened to see the SWAT teams. Right?
Correct. Well, there are some, I don't know if they're still there, but I did take pictures and they're in my book, where it says, no trespassing and, different things that would supposedly scare you away.
Okay.
But that's just not always the case. And I think it's very peculiar. In fact, I think that they deliberately emphasize the non-threatening astronomy research aspect so that it even becomes less questionable about what's actually going on there. And that facility is 5 stories deep. And that's the first one I ever learned about. And even how I learned about it was kind of interesting because where I was working at the time, I had a lot of interaction with the people who would come in. And there was this couple who had seen my website, skyshipsovercashiers.com, kind of quiet and shy. And they would come in on a regular basis and start conversations about UFOs. Well, finally, I said, well, why don't we get together and let me interview you? So I met them at their camper trailer, and they didn't want to talk about UFOs. The woman had been raised on I don't know how to describe it, but on a facility where her father was in classified work.
Okay.
And it had to do with nuclear, fuel. And she grew up knowing about some of this stuff. And she wanted to tell me about this facility under Perry, Pisgah Astronomical Research Institute. And she said, that facility has been there for a long time. It's 5 stories deep, and that they have the ability to wipe out people's memories. And I've even had my own experience after I began to investigate this. On several occasions, I went there with other people in the car. And the closer we got to that facility, your mind kind of feel weird. It's like uncomfortable, and it's like you wanted to get away from it. I call it people repellent. And that happened whenever I would get close to that place. I don't think that happens all the time. I think they can target people. And then the witnesses, they come from all sorts of different places. One was a man who, when I met him, he was in his 50s. But as a young man, he had worked at Christmas tree farms that are near this facility. And people who worked there had seen animals brought into that facility in cages. So what in the world were they bringing animals in there? I'm guessing for some kind of experimentation. So I don't know if each facility is used for the same reasons or not, but that one has a real creepy side to it.
It does. And I've read some of your work. I've read especially about the sky ships. I read those a couple of years ago. And I'm not trying to be offensive, but what you're telling me is they've got some weapons that they can use on people that I've never heard of before. I mean, we know what happened with the microwaves in Cuba, the Cuban syndrome, Havana syndrome.
Didn't you suspect that for some time, that that's what was being done to those people?
Yes, I assumed it was microwaves, but that was affecting, I guess it was affecting their minds though, wasn't it?
Now, what I experienced, what I call people repellent, didn't have that long-term effect like the Havana syndrome. Thank goodness. But it obviously was, I mean, everybody in the car felt it. It's like, we really don't want to go here.
I'm really kind of lost at the idea of being able to, send out a beam or cross a fence that affects your mind to the point that you get paranoid.
I wouldn't call it paranoid. It's just, it was uncomfortable. Let's get out of here.
So it wasn't that you was getting afraid. It was that
it was uncomfortable, and it was, and something was making that happen, and that would make you uncomfortable. You would not want somebody messing with your brain.
This is some real tinfoil hat stuff going on.
Yeah.
That just amazes me. We've already went to places I had no clue we was going this deep.
Well, I'm jumping around a little bit, but
Well, fine.
the man Hawk, that I
Mhm.
have never used his real name, he was in the medical field, and when he retired, he decided to volunteer for the state's National Guard because of his medical experience.
Mhm.
And when they found out he was cleared by the had been cleared by the FBI and had intelligence clearance, they didn't want to use him as a medic. They used him as really a spy to spy on what was going on at Mount Mitchell. So why would our own government be spying on a facility in our
If they
state?
own. Yeah.
You know, you just have to wonder.
Do you know who, and can you say, if not, I understand, who Hawk was working for?
He had volunteered for the state National Guard,
Right.
but when somebody stepped in because of his previous security clearance, I don't know if another entity stepped in at that point. I'm guessing it did.
Okay. But we have no idea who, because, like you said, are we talking FBI spying on CIA, NSA spying on whoever? Or,
Well, that one place is where the UN blue hats were seen.
huh,
So that puts it into a whole different dimension.
it
And
does.
I have not. That's not been the association like with Perry or the other places that I've mentioned.
Mary, this is mind blowing. It's incredible. I hear people talk about this sort of thing, and I always, take it with a grain of salt. It's a little paranoid, little out there, but I've read your work. I know you are not that way. This is just mind blowing.
And I will not overstate things. Having been an editor for major newspapers,
Mhm.
I know better. And so when I put stuff out there, it's information that I've had from some really good sources.
Mhm.
I don't get into the speculation of it, though I am a little bit with you right now.
The aircrafts are military aircraft coming and going into these mountain hangars or mountain bases.
I have heard people say that they've seen vehicles fly into the Chimney Rock area.
Okay.
Again, but that's the only one. Well, no, I'm saying the wrong thing, because at the one beneath the Smoky Mountain National Park, we became aware of that, I believe, when it was being built. And we would have Osprey fly over and drop what they call containers, what are like the size of a railroad car.
Okay.
The two primary, well, it's more than that, but the two first witnesses I got on that site were a couple, and they both had been in the military, so they were not dummies. And they were pulled off. They may have been getting gas or going to a convenience store or something just south of the park, just south of Cherokee. And those Cherokee and the national park butt into each other.
Mhm.
And they saw this tractor trailer with something on the back of it. And I have a photo of it in my book. And he said it looked like a decontamination chamber. So
Okay.
why was that there? He's a real easygoing guy to talk to. He went up and talked to the driver. And the driver said that she was waiting for 5 more vehicles, and a caravan was going to go to some other place to offload what they had.
Okay.
They waited. 5 tractor trailers arrived. They all had tarps on them that were labeled U.S. Navy. They were escorted by white SUVs with men inside with rifles, or with, I'm not, rifle is probably the wrong word, but with guns.
Weapons.
And this couple followed this caravan at a distance, and they went past something that many people would know. It's the I always want to say it wrong. There's the visitor center for the park on the North Carolina side.
Okay.
When you go past that, the very first campground is called Smoke Mountain. And so this caravan pulled in there. And as soon as they pulled in there, the gates were shut and nobody could get there anymore. The road, there's a road called Hind Toogie Road. That has to be an old Indian word. and it's on the eastern part of the park. And that was closed for 2 years for no good reason. But that was how they were, another way they were getting things into the facility that was being built. So one of the witnesses even got a photo of a cargo plane pulling out of that area with the back door still in the process of closing as it left the area. So it had unloaded stuff there. Again, witnesses come from the strangest places. Two men who worked at the fishery in Cherokee were very concerned because the water level coming through the creek or through the little river to feed the fishery was drying up. And they thought, well, maybe beavers or something had built a dam. And so they took the little dirt road going up the creek to find out what was going on. And up at the top, there is a reservoir, which is normally full of water. It was bone dry, and there was a 50,000 gallon tank in the middle of it, and there were pipes going from that down into the ground. So it was being tapped as a water source for the facility beneath the ground.
Would this be while it was being constructed? Is the water levels of the creek better now? Do you know?
I do not know. I really do not know, because most of the research I was doing at that time was while this building was of the facility was obviously being done.
The and I'm drawing a blank here. The longest national park in the world, the Long Drive. It comes right through Mount Airy, nearby here. Anyway, it's the one that drives right along the Blue Ridge.
The Appalachian Parkway? No.
Parkway. The Parkway,
Yeah,
yes.
the Parkway, yeah. And the Parkway is really, really close to this facility.
Okay.
In fact, you take the Parkway to find your way to Hind-Toogie Road to get to this facility. You cannot get to the front entrance of it. You cannot, nobody's been able to get that close or get a photo of the entrance.
And is that because there's guards or fencing?
That's because they made it like inaccessible.
Okay. You couldn't even walk in, huh?
No, well, I see the fact that they were having to drop their equipment by air. The fact that the road was being built was closed for 2 years. They said it was because there'd been a washout. Well, there had been nothing that would cause a washout. Okay. And when it was all done, it was suddenly all repaved, and there'd been nothing wrong with the road before that. 2 years is a long time. So perhaps the heavy equipment was wearing out
tearing the road
pavement. Yeah.
Wow. I'm kind of stunned at the moment.
You are, huh?
Very, actually. And as you mentioned, the ospreys, I've seen them fly really low over my trailer here, heading towards Chimney Rock, heading in that general direction.
Interesting.
Because I'm not far from there either. So I'm wondering if I'm seeing some of this. And like I said, they're low. I can see the people standing in the open on the doorways and such.
That's low.
Same thing with helicopters. I can see the other people standing in the doorways of the helicopters. And I got to say, at that time, I'm thinking there's no military bases near here. Where are they going?
Right.
Apparently, I was badly mistaken.
Well, and I apologize for jumping all over the place, but the Perry facility, which is off the Blue Ridge, a landmark would be, it's called Devil's Tower, I think. It's just immediately that on the Parkway, near the elbow, what they call the elbow of the Parkway.
Okay, I'm not sure that one. So
anyhow, I forgot what I was going to tell you about that.
There is all kinds of legends, though, about our local Pilot Mountain, that Indians and lost tribes living inside it, things like that. I wonder if this is all somehow related, or if this is just a paranormal hotspot.
It looks like you're going to have to start doing some investigation there in Mayberry.
Yeah, I may, and I may have to go well armed. Mary, I got to take off for a commercial. If you'll hold on for just a second, I will be right back.
Okay, will do.
All right. Okay, guys, I don't know what to tell you about this one now. This is kind of frightening, and I like the conspiracy stuff, but when it's in your face like this, it's kind of frightening. It's kind of scary. So I don't want to scare you all. I want you to get your mind off of that completely. I want you to check out a couple of things here, and then we'll be back and talk more to Mary about my paranoia.
Hey UFO conference enthusiasts, we've got another great event for you in 2024. The Saucers and Aliens Kansas UFO Day in Dimension G is being held in the UFO capital of Kansas, Geneseo, on July 6th. This is a fun festival in the middle of nowhere. There will be a parade, decorated yards, costumes, vendors, speakers, and a showing of the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. Appropriately, an 8-foot-tall statue of Gort and a statue of Klaatu will be dedicated. This will be the only museum in the U.S. with these custom-made statues. If you'd like to donate to the statue project or attend the event, visit GeneseoMuseum.com. That's GENESEO Museum.com. Be sure to bring your camera when you attend the event. That's GeneseoMuseum.com. This is Margie Kay, and I'd like to say thank you to all of our KUNX show hosts, staff, listeners, and viewers for making us number one on Paranormal Talk Radio.
All right, friends. I'll come back and we'll talk more about joining the NX network and all the neat stuff there. But last year, I spoke at the XCon, which we have another one coming up in October in Missouri, Springfield, Missouri. And last year, I did a thing on ghosts, and they said, Dan, you've been really researching these giants and the big conspiracy around giants. You want to talk about that? And I said, no, I'm not very much up on that. We need to get Mary here because Mary knows conspiracies a lot better than me, and this one is crazy. Military craft, UN soldiers, possibly foreign soldiers, tanks. There's so much going on here, and are you the only one reporting it? I've never heard this from anyone but you.
The reason I did the book was because I couldn't find any evidence that anybody had done that. Okay. You know, most of us have heard about the underground facilities in the western part of the country. Yes. I would not write another book about something like that because it's been covered in many, many different ways. But nobody was covering this. In fact, that's been the case with each book that I've done. When I did the one about Cherokee Little People, it was because I found out that the old timers who had first found the old caves and skeletons, they were all in their like 80s and 90s. and nobody had recorded their stories. And all I could think of was, I have got to preserve this information before they die. And so that was an unintended book too, just hoping to preserve something. So I kind of get into these things backwards usually.
Just the stories though you've told, and I'd love to talk more sometime with you about the Cherokee Little People. That's the Cherokee has a legend of Pilot Mountain and a group who live there. So it's personally of interest. I do a ghost tour, and that's part of it. But right now, this thing here has got me really kind of freaked out.
Well, let me give you some other ways, because the way I got the information was, it was like picking apples off a tree. You get one bite here and one bite here, and all of a sudden you have a big bushel basket.
Right.
And I've had some excellent witnesses. One man was a deputy sheriff in a city in Florida, and he wasn't old, but he had gotten cancer. And so he retired early. He moved here to the mountains. And anyhow, he loved to go in his Corvette and drive the Blue Ridge Parkway at night. And he was at this Devil's Tower one night, and he pulled over and he felt some vibration. Well, he went and put his ear next to one of the rocks, and he could hear mechanical sounds beneath the ground. Okay. And that's not the only place. I had another one, and again, it was a witness who had at one time been in the military, and this one was a woman, and she was curious like you are, and she went to check out what was going on in the Smoky Mountain National Park, and she felt the vibrations again beneath her feet, and she said it sounded like somebody, like machinery pounding pylons into the ground, like if you're going to build a bridge. And she said it was that loud. What's interesting is this usually goes on at night, and in the morning time, you're not going to hear these sounds, or not as readily. So there's some definite activity that can simply be heard, not just, reported.
Is that all through the Blue Ridge Parkway, or is that pretty much in just certain areas around the tower, Devil's Tower or whatever?
From what I've heard, I cannot substantiate this. This is me putting pieces together.
Okay.
There was 2 Air Force guys who were investigating this just out of curiosity, like you have. And their conclusion was that there's a whole underground, what do you call it? Almost like a train system beneath the ground, or subway system, that goes from up in near Washington, D.C., through the Appalachians, down here to North Carolina, as far south as Atlanta. And we believe that tunnels have been built to connect these facilities, at least some of them.
There was some facilities built in an old limestone quarry in Missouri. I know it's been covered in a couple of different places. But in that area, they also hear what they believe is underground explosions. And I'm wondering if all of this is interconnected somehow. Maybe this goes across the country.
There are sources that say there are. I don't have any credible way to say, yes, this is definite, but I certainly have read about it and heard about it, and it probably is true.
You said they were bringing animals in, probably for testing, to a astronomy school, basically.
This was before it became, I think it was before it officially became Perry. Probably in that transition time is my guess, but that's just guesswork on my part, because that goes back quite a few years where they actually saw that happening. But I wish I could remember off the top of my head, and I can't. But there was this vehicle, like a military vehicle, that pulled up in front of where I was living, or not where I was working, and it had credentials for, I can't remember what it was, but it's the part of the government that does, it would be mind control experiments and things like that. Okay. And this thing was there, and it went in the direction of this, Perry facility. And, Silva, which is where I am, is a little town. What would somebody like that be doing in that little town with that kind of marking on the car? Yeah. So it would fit right into mind control things.
This is so mind blowing. I'm kind of out of words to say about it. I'm just so shocked. I was not expecting this. I was expecting more the UFOs and alien bases and stuff like Area 51. Uh, this is more expected, more normal, and that makes it even more scary.
That might have a scarier aspect to it. Now, this whole area, we have UFOs, we have Bigfoot, we have Cherokee Little People, we have underground bases. It is a hotspot. And one of the books I haven't mentioned is about Bigfoot. And so it's just a fascinating place that I have found myself.
And we have seen in other areas, places that we would consider hotspots, where there is a lot of Bigfoot sightings. Where Mothman was found in West Virginia, we had Men in Black, UFOs, poltergeist activity. A place in Missouri called Marley Woods, same thing. It's got weird creatures that don't stop when they're hit with high-powered rifles. And
to me, that's creepier than what I'm talking about.
Oh, I don't know. Again, when it's something that it's just so hard to believe, I think I'm safer with that or feel it than something I know the U.S. government's capable of. I remember the Tuskegee experiments. They are capable of some really nasty stuff.
Right. That's a terrible piece of our history.
It is. And it's not just the Tuskegee experiments. In the 60s, they were dropping radiation over St. Louis just to see where the wind would blow it.
I did not know that.
It's interesting to look it up. They were doing experiments, and where they dropped this radiation to see where it would travel if there was a nuclear blast there, because we had McDonnell Douglas there at the time and Scott Air Force Base. Suddenly, the poor urban dwellers were coming down with cancer at incredible rates. And
that is so wrong. That is so wrong.
It is. So my point is, I would rather deal with something that probably doesn't exist, or if it does, all right, we'll figure it out, than what we're talking about, which is our government, because we know what they're capable of.
Yeah, our government, the people that we elect, the people that we see as one level of government, but there is control behind the scenes that we do not know about. And it's that aspect of the quote government that is the creepiest or the scariest.
Yeah. So
the rest of the government's just beginning to look dumb.
Yeah, they really are. They're fighting over silly things while there's real problems afoot.
Right.
What is your opinion on, would you say the government we see is not the government that's actually running things? Is this a smoke and mirrors?
The real powerful forces within our government are beyond what we normally see. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And they're probably involved in all that we're talking about here with underground military bases.
Again, that could be two levels. That could just be some of these underground facilities are created as survival, not survival for you and me, but survival for the elites and for the government and to keep continuity going. So that's a real practical reason for it. It's when you get into the things like, the animals being carted into the facility and mind control issues. That's a whole different thing.
The mind control issues really got me amazed. And because I'm drawing the parallel to the Havana syndrome. And we've heard before there was a hiker lost in California, very near Area 51. People going to look for him said when they approached a certain cave, their bodies just felt weird. Their minds wasn't working right. They were getting sick and they could never go back into that cave. A year or two later, they try again and it's gone. It's been blocked off or something.
You mean the cave is gone, not the effect?
Right. Yeah. The cave is, the effect's gone too because the cave has been hidden or covered up somehow.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of very similar to what you're talking about here. They had something that kept people from going into that cave, which again was within a couple of miles of the line for Area 51.
Yeah. Like I said, people repellent.
It sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
And police were experimenting, or they were looking at a microwave gun that would make people's skin feel weird and itch and do all the stuff that keeps crowds, makes riots stop. And I wonder if this is related to that somehow.
It could be. It could be. But since you mentioned Area 51, let me give you a story on that one. There's a man, he's now passed away under suspicious circumstances. His name is William Pollock. You can find out about him on the internet. I became friends with his wife, and his story was, she told it after he died because he didn't want it told beforehand. Quite a man. He was involved with designing the security for Area 51. He was involved in designing the security for Air Force One. So he was no small potatoes. And he was called out to go to a place called Tonopah. Tonopah is out in Nevada. It's less known than Area 51, but it's still the same kind of activity. And when he got there, there was this plane that flew in, came right up as close to the door where they were going to have this meeting. And a man got out who was dressed in what he called high German suit and clothing. And the man walked into the meeting, he sat in the back, and he listened to everybody give their reports. Now, this was like a command performance meeting.
Okay.
And then he got up and he spoke a little bit. He spoke in what he called high German. And then he got back on the plane and left. At that point, he made I guess the conclusion that the Nazis still exist and that they still are involved with our government. I've heard that from other sources, but having met this man's wife, who is a really wonderful lady and very credible, and it's just, I don't know, it kind of rattles your brain.
Now, that almost draws us back into the old Operation High Jump in 1946, I believe, when they allegedly was going to look for, well, they said it was a scientific experiment, but they sent a bunch of warships to the Antarctic.
Right.
And I think Admiral Perry said there was something there, and they got out of there.
It was Admiral Byrd, I believe.
Admiral Byrd, you're right. I said Perry. You're right. It was Byrd.
Right. Well, let me update you on this whole Antarctica thing.
Yes.
In the book that you briefly mentioned at the beginning, and it's called Spy in the Sky, I've discovered stuff in Antarctica using Google Earth in many, many situations where I have posted that on the website, Skyships Over Cashiers. Within a day, it's been wiped out. It's been erased. You can't see it anymore. Thank goodness I used the print key on my keyboard. And so in the book, Spy in the Sky, I've got pictures before and after. There's one that was really dramatic. It's an entrance into Antarctica. In round figures, it's like 100 feet tall and about 300 feet wide. It's actually shaped more like this. And once I posted that, it looked like somebody took a bottle of ink and poured it all over it. You couldn't even see it. But it disappeared in steps. That was the first thing that happened. And then I backed up with Google so I could see two entrances. And I posted both of them on the website. And for one brief time, one said Hollow Earth Entrance, and the other one said Hollow Earth Entrance 2. Then those disappeared. And eventually that whole thing was transformed into what appeared to be a field of ice and snow. So you can't even find evidence of it anymore. But I do have the before and after pictures. So to me, that says that's an active entrance.
And I've seen...
It's certainly big enough for people to fly into.
I've seen pictures of what you're describing. I'm sure it was in Antarctica. It was a round top, level on the bottom, and it looked like something you'd fly a plane into. And I've seen the similar thing over in Utah, pictures of it. I didn't see it myself, but I was very close to that in one of the big state parks down there. And it looks like a big tunnel entrance, but yet it's a couple of 100 feet from the ground. You know, if you drove out, you'd straight down. So is this all part of the whole same thing, I guess?
Cover up. They're covering up everything. I mean, I found all sorts of cover up on Mars, cover up in Antarctica. Those are the two big hotspots. Another thing, and it's not in the conspiracy type thing, and I wonder why they're doing it.
Okay.
Antarctica is melting really fast because of global temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
And just a couple years ago, we began to find these ancient cities emerging from the ice. Now I'm talking square cut building like walls that are clumped together like a city, and they go along like a city would develop along a river or something like that. Well, we posted those, and after we posted them, guess what? They get blurred. Why are they hiding that? And the reason I was so excited about finding that evidence is that most scientists say that that continent has been under ice for 34 million years.
Yeah.
All right. That means these are the oldest structures in the world that are starting to appear from the melting ice. People think the Great Pyramid is big or old. It's not. It's not even 5,000 years old. 5,000 is a blip compared to 34 million years.
Yeah.
And that's being covered up too. Why? Why are, you mentioned giants. Why do those disappear into the Smithsonian, never to be seen again? Why is that kind of history being hidden? I see no reason for that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm with you on all of that. I've seen those pictures you've talked about of giant skeletons and pictures of entrances, the pyramids in Antarctica. They look just like a pyramid covered in snow.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, now wasn't it 4 or 5 years ago they started taking big wigs like I think the Pope went down there at the time.
Yes. John Kerry went down there. I did an article so long ago, I can't remember the details, but the heads of different countries, like from Australia, and for some reason that's popping out, were down there. And Kerry flew down there. He at the time was Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. He flew down at a time when they thought, he wouldn't be missed. And there was, big gathering down there. So something was going on.
And originally they were saying there was, of course, probably disinformation, but that there was Nazi stuff in there that they had found, which I don't think the Nazis were around 35 million years ago.
No, they weren't, but there's evidence of them much more recently.
Yes, apparently. So
one of the people, again, the stories come from different directions. I met an astronaut when I lived on Cocoa Beach in Florida, and he was a friend. I'm putting this real simply. He was a friend of Werner von Braun.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and the two of them had so many interests in common. So occasionally when they would get together, when von Braun would come from Texas to Florida, they would go out around the pool away from people or out to the beach away from people, and they would just tell stories or, share information. And according to Clark McClellan, who's the contact I had, the Nazis were definitely in South America, not South America, Antarctica, and were definitely involved in all sorts of stuff down there.
And this is years and years before this most recent conspiracy theories of Antarctica.
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, von Braun's been gone for, 20, 30 years now?
I don't know anymore, but he's been dead for quite some time, yes.
Right. This has been quite a ride, Mary. Maybe I can get you to come back and talk more about this, because I think we could have a good time just discussing this kind of thing. Your book, Skyship Over Cashiers, those are UFOs.
That's the website. That's the website. Skyship Over Cashiers is the website. Spy in the Sky is my most recent book. Okay. And there's been tremendous steps to keep that from getting out to the public, too.
No kidding. Can you give me an idea of it?
I'll give you just the essence of it. I have 5 books listed on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most recent. It's the only one that's been treated differently. And what they did is they ordered every book that I had printed. They apparently gunshot them out across the country to people who hadn't ordered them, or to bookstores that hadn't ordered them. And so most of those came back.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 printings because they disappeared so quickly. I had the second printing. Well, I have a whole lot of books now that I am unable to sell through Amazon because it's being blocked there. So I only can sell those through the website. And I know that's the only quote business type thing I do on my website. And that's just to get the information out. It is a money loser for me. There's no money being made on these books.
Right.
Especially that one.
Now, are you going to any of the conferences, paranormal, UFO, anything like that, and trying to sell the books and lecture about some of this?
Right now, I've found myself at the beginning of this year being a caretaker for somebody, and I don't have the flexibility to do that, but I have done them in the past.
Well, let me just briefly say to the folks out there, Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond, you really might want to order this quickly.
You'll have to go to the website, Skyships Over Cashiers, and go to Editor's Corner. That's the only way you can get it.
Okay, and skyships.overcashiers.com, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, friends, you need to grab that book before something happens here. Mary, I hope you stay healthy. We both know there's been a lot of UFO types investigators who suddenly come down ill. So please take very good care of yourself and keep things checked out.
I will do that. And thank you for having me on your show. I enjoyed talking to you.
Well, I hope you'll come back because apparently we got a lot more to talk about. You have given me the willies. And I'm a ghost hunter, and I never get the feelings you've just put down my spine. At the end of the day, the ghost can't hurt me, but the government, not so sure.
Oh, yeah, they could if they want to. No doubt about it.
All right. Mary Joyce, thank you again for coming on, and we'll talk to you again soon. I hope you'll come back.
All righty. You take care.
Take care now. Thank you. Guys, I don't know what to say about it. You heard her. You've heard the rumors. I'm sure you've seen the stories on YouTube. And, of course, we know everything on the Internet's real, so we got to keep that in mind also. But she has been doing this for some time, and I believe everything she said. So may want to pick up that book. Remember, it's on skyships.overcashiers.com, and it's called Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. I'm going to order one here pretty quick because you never know what's going to happen. They may suddenly have a house fire and they disappear. I hope not, but I don't trust anyone. It's not paranoia when they really are out to get you. My friends, I do want to quickly mention joining the Unx Network. All you got to do is go on unxnetwork.com, first page, down a little bit. It's free. You just put your email address in, and for that, of course, you get access to the blog. You get access to the magazine every month. Our magazine comes to you in electric form, emailed, and you can order it in paper if you like, or you can just read it right there on your email at your leisure. We've got some really interesting stuff there. Maybe we can even talk Mary into knocking out an article or two. We got some really good stuff by some really good authors. I've got, I would say probably an article and sometimes two in most magazines. So you need to check all of that out. And again, it's free. We've got the XCon coming up in Springfield, Missouri on October 11th to the 13th. I'll be talking about ghost hunting, and this hotel, we held it at last year, turns out to be haunted as well. A lot of stuff going on. For the folks who's watching me, Appalachian Paracon, Appalachian Paranormal Arts and Cultural Collective in Beckley, West Virginia. And it's going to be on May 11th, and I will be there talking about my subject, ghosts. And also, don't forget the XCon, because I'll be lecturing there as well. I'll be lecturing also in a library in Sullivan, Missouri in October, and I'll tell you more about that as time gets closer. Excuse me. But for right now, I think I'm going to back on out of here and check the driveway, check my alarms, make sure nothing's going off, because it was a strange conversation, wasn't it? Wasn't it one that bothers you? Just a little. But for now, Thank you all for coming. I want you to stay cool. I want you to stay safe. And I guess probably above all, I want you to stay spooked. Good night.